Let's bring in Laura Jones to talk
Yes.
about New Jersey schools because it's so confusing. Some districts are open, some are closed. A lot of New Jersey schools have been remote or hybrid for most of the school year, and it's just a big mystery as to the rhyme or reason why this is. So, here to break it down for us is longtime New Jersey political reporter Laura Jones. How you doing, Laura?
I'm well. I'm well. So good to see you both.
Yes, yes, same here. So let's jump right in. Laura, why are some schools open and some schools still on hybrid?
Right. Well, New Jersey's a home rule state, meaning a lot of the decisions, specifically education, they're made at the local level. They're not making that at the state level. There are state guidelines, but the State Department of Education isn't coming in and saying all schools must be virtual, all must be hybrid. They're not. So this is happening at the local level. And at the local level, what works in one community may not work in another community. For example, urban areas. A lot of these schools were crowded to begin with, and they were bursting at the seams. So in order to accommodate students spaced out and also to take into account transportation, because buses can't run fully loaded the way they were before. So in order to do that, you need more bus routes, you need more space. And some of the schools don't have the space. They don't have the money. They don't have the resources to be able to get their students in. Other school districts, if they're smaller, there's not a one size fits all, which may be in some situations good for some districts, but it's certainly very frustrating. When you have private schools, they have a lot more latitude. They can change they can put plexiglass up. They can change the schedule. They can change the configuration of a classroom. Public schools, there's a lot more red tape that you have to go through, and a lot of layers that you have to kind of peel back in order to open a building. So that's why some districts are in person, some are a hybrid. I think last I checked, there are less than 100 public schools in person, and we have over 600 districts in the state of New Jersey. Less than 100 are full-time in person.
Wow. Laura, I know that this has become, overwhelmingly frustrating for parents. I know I have friends who, if your kids are a little bit older, they're kind of getting wise to the whole virtual class thing. Oh, teacher gave me an hour off, and they're, off in the living room. And if you can't be right there chasing them down, it's very frustrating. And I think I know here in my hometown of Montclair, it's definitely causing some friction between parents and administrators.
Right. I actually was looking up something online and saw a new phrase. I think it was Zoom truancy, right? You're Zoom truant. I'm like, oh, I haven't heard Zoom truancy, right? So students might show up, but are they paying attention? That's hard to say. And you have parents who are really, really upset, and they're advocating for their children. And sometimes what parents are doing is what is right for them, what's best for their family. So sometimes it will kind of conflict or, butt heads with a school district. And that's what we saw in Middlesex County. And it was a story that got picked up and, went national, and even I saw it on an international platform. It was a group of parents who have been very vocal about, we want our kids back in school. Middlesex County, the assistant superintendent fired back at a mom by using a picture of her and her kids that was lifted from social media and said, well, this is the reason why we can't go back, or one of the reasons why we can't go back. Now, whether or not that is accurate about, because there was a mother with 3 other women, they didn't have their masks on, and there were kids outside sledding. And, parents were upset because they're thinking, are you kidding me? You lift something off social media and to, say that this is why we're not. And that blew up, and I think there have been apologies that have been made, but there's definitely tension. But you kind of take a step back, and where are we as a society where we're shaming parents for taking their kid outside to sled or taking a picture with your friends? I take my mask off to take a picture. None of us are perfect. And when we're in this gotcha society for gotcha, you're not wearing your mask, gotcha, you have more than 4 people in a photo, you get really paranoid and you start thinking, well, I'm just going to shut down. And it's really unfortunate, because this time last year, could you imagine getting upset because kids are outside playing in the snow? Again, we want to be safe, and we want to take we want to take COVID seriously, but it is very disheartening to see the dialogue. And one other thing to add is our kids are watching how we conduct ourselves. How are we advocating for our kids? How are we saying, well, we want our schools opened? You know, how are the teachers responding? How are administrators watching? How are administrators responding? We're all human. You know, we've all fired off an email. Oh man, I shouldn't have done that. You know, because I feel on
Laura,
both sides. Yeah.
Laura, I just want to play devil's advocate real fast here, but before we finish up, I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of pulling stuff off of social media or and not to do it in an accusatory way, but I do think there is a concern to say, well, you know, if one person's family is not being careful, is not being cautious, and now we're letting those children into a building with other people's children who are following the rules, who are taking every precaution, and this thing travels, you know, are we putting our families at risk, our children at risk?
Right. It's a valid point. You know, the administration, they absolutely have a point. At what cost, right? How can we really monitor, right? We have a snapshot. And if you take a snapshot at me at any certain point of the day, it might look like I am fully compliant. I'm, you know, got everything, I'm, you know, doing everything that I should. And at another moment, you know, I could be caught off guard. And I think that kind of applies to all people. So, you know, expecting everybody to live in a consistent bubble of, you know, masks, and, you know, that's something that we want to strive for. We want to try to, you know, take all the precautions that we can, washing our hands, staying apart, but it's not always realistic. And, you know, where do we draw the line between what, you know, what people are doing, what they post on social media? Is that fair game? You know, that you're getting into a wild west of what we're putting on social media, what can be used against us. And I think ultimately, you know, people have very good intentions. You know, they want to say, look, this person had a birthday party. Well, do we know? Maybe the kids were all tested. Maybe they all just had a test and they saw that we are all COVID negative, right? We don't always know the full story behind a picture.
Right. So we don't have all the details.
Both sides have a point. Both sides have a point.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you don't want to be on the receiving end of when you're out there, you know, yourself saying, well, I'm doing this, I'm trying to do that. I'm also not perfect. And I think it's difficult. You know, when you hold yourself to high standards, you better be willing to stick to those high standards. And it's really, it's hard on both sides. Teachers are human. We're all humans.
Unfortunately, we just have no playbook for this one. No playbook just yet. Laura Jones, political reporter for the state of New Jersey. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. You have a great weekend.
You too.